Okay, so we're going to take a look at interactive touch events, which really adds some dynamic capabilities for our end audience users who are going to look at our interactive augmentations. So here we have a SolidWorks object that came in. It has 3 different animations. And so we've given touch geometry control to be able to display different animations at different interactive times. We have a particle system that shows the flow of material through this piece of equipment. And so we can interactively turn that on and off using a UI button. We have additional pop-out information that shows what each element of the machine is and does. And then we have the ability to turn off the outer shell, allowing our audience to explore the engineering inside the piece of hardware. So all these different interactive states are all controlled using the same underlying kind of core, and that is the event triggers. And that's what we're going to look at adding now to our demo here. And so we have our top level empty game object at 0, 0. We have a directional light, and we're going to add a couple just primitive objects to show how this functionality works. And so we're going to move these into position. We'll go ahead and rotate those. And we'll just make this sphere a bit larger so we can see it. And so if we look at our cube object, we've got a number of components that make up what a cube is. The cube itself, the game object at the top level, allows us to toggle it on and off. Transform controls its position. The cube itself is loaded through the mesh filter. And then the renderer controls the surfacing on this particular item and what material is displayed. And then the box collider will identify any collision events on this particular box. So we can see this collider element, which is resizable if we wanted to. But in this case, it matches the size of the original geometry that it's assigned to. You have box collider, you have a sphere collider, there's a capsule collider, and then also a mesh collider, which will match whatever the geometry is of any object that's brought in. So that's basically the collider. It's used primarily for detecting collisions when you're using it for physics dynamics. If the trigger is set as a trigger, it will then send an event to the event system, which we have in our AR camera on the Reality browser. It'll send an event trigger to that, which then we can interact with. And so in order to do that, so all we have to do is set this to be trigger. We can add the counterpart to the event system, which is the event trigger. And so the event trigger is looking to figure out what we want to listen for. Could be a pointer down, could be a pointer up. You can use these interactively, or a pointer click. And so we're going to add the items that we want to control when this event is recognized. And so we're going to add the cube, and we're going to add the sphere. And then what we're going to do is use this set active or inactive function, right? And if you notice, this drop-down list has the same components that are in this cube. So any item that we add into this list will show whatever components are in that particular item. And so in this case, we can use the set active on both of these cube and sphere. And the cube is going to become invisible or inactive, and then the sphere will become active. On the sphere, we're going to do the exact same thing in reverse. We'll go ahead and set this as a trigger so we can listen for clicks or touches. We're going to add our event trigger. We'll use the same pointer click as what to listen for. And then we're going to add our 2 items again, a cube and the sphere. And we're going to use the same functionality of set active for both of these. And in this case, we're going to show the cube, and then we'll hide the sphere. And so this is the core fundamental method of how all the interactivity that we've created in that previous example has been created. If you had a particle system on this item, it would then show up on this list, and you could hit enable or disable for particles. If you had an animator component, you would see that on this list, and you'd be able to start or stop the animation, and or send a animator trigger, which are basically trigger events that you can create that handle the transition in and out of different animations. And so you have this capability to control all your different animation states, as well as all of the different elements that are within a particular object as far as its components and parameters. And so we have this object now. We're going to turn the sphere off as our starting point, because we're going to interactively turn it on and off once we start toggling. And then if we had user interface buttons, and we'll look at that in a future video, they already have their trigger built into them. So all we would need to do is add the items and how we're going to control them, and that would follow the same process that we would use for controlling these events. One that's very handy is in the mesh renderer. We can change the material, and so you can have selectors with multiple types of surfacing for a particular product, or different patterns on a particular item. And so we'll just take a quick look at this right now. And so there's our cube. It'll recognize our touch event and switch over to the sphere. And the sphere will then recognize our touch event and switch back to the cube. And so that is the core underlying process of creating interactive events without coding in Unity. And it extends through just a ton of capabilities based upon what type of components are in our object. And so we'll pick up in the next video, and we'll take a look at the elements that we can add into animations, and then how to interactively control the animator to display different animations on our user's touch.